Hi, Teri here from Stamping Magic. Welcome back to my channel. Today's project is this cute card. I've used the Gangs All Meer stamp set for most of the images and the sentiment, and this is one of our current celebration offerings this year. And then for the birds, I've used the Beautiful Moments stamp set. And this is a bridge fold card. It stands up beautifully and it has this extra band across the front which makes it a bridge. On the back is a panel where you can write your message. The card will fold flat in either direction and will go into an envelope sized for a 6-inch square card. It's a little under 6 inches. Now, if you're an A4 user and you wanted to fit the card into one of our standard C6 envelopes, you could do so just by cutting the height of the card down to 11 centimeters. Now, unfortunately, this won't work for my US Canadian viewers because your standard envelopes are very small. You could play with the sizes. I think you'd probably have to make the width of your card base about 8 inches for it to work. And then you'd need to reduce the height to about 4¼ inches. So let's get started. These are all the measurements you need for all the elements required to create this project. So if you are interested in reproducing it, you can take a screenshot and refer to it later. This is the Gangs All Meer stamp set, and I'm using most of the images today and one of the sentiments. I'll be stamping on a scrap piece of Whisper White card, and I'm using Memento Tuxedo black ink to start with. Now I need 7 cactus. I only stamped 6 here because obviously I can't count. And I need 2 lizards. I'm stamping the sentiment with VersaFine Onyx black ink because I want to emboss it. So I've prepped the cardstock with my embossing buddy. And I just want the happy birthday part of the sentiment, so I'm covering the rest of it with a piece of washi tape. Then I can ink up my stamp, remove the tape and stamp my sentiment down. Then I'll cover with clear powder and heat set it with my heat tool. I did eventually stamp that 7th cactus, and then I'm going to punch out the sentiment using the classic label punch. So I'm inserting it first of all so the sentiment is on the left hand side and punching. Then I can reinsert the sentiment and punch out the right hand side. I'm going to stamp my Whisper White back panel next, and I'm just decorating this using the cactus again. Now I will need to mask off my first one, so I'm just showing you here that I hold all the masks I've created in with my stamps in the same case, and these I can reuse time and time again. So I'm going to stamp my first cactus and then I'll cover it with the mask, and then I'm going to stamp another one to the right of it and one to the left of it. I'm now going to stamp all the front panels. Now because my bridge is going to cover the bottom part of the card, I've just placed that so I can get the positioning right for my images. I want to stamp them just a little bit above the top of the bridge. So I've stamped my center image and I'm using Memento Tuxedo black ink again. And then I can stamp the images on the side panels. Once stamped, I'm going to cover all the images with masks. Now I'm using proper masking paper, but if you haven't got that, you could just use post-it notes. Just stamp the images on post-it notes, cut them out, and then place them over your images. And this will protect all the images when you do your ink blended backgrounds. I'm going to use a piece of torn paper as my horizon, and I'm going to ink blend the ground first of all. I'm using Sahara Sand ink and I'm going to apply it using a blending brush. So all I'm doing is picking up the ink on the brush and then applying it to my cardstock. The sky is going to be blended in much the same way, so again I'm using a torn piece of paper as my horizon and to protect the ground I've already blended. Now I'm using balmy blue ink, by the way. I did make a huge mistake here. I should have added my mask for the sun into the sky, but I forgot completely and I didn't remember until I'd almost finished blending the sky. So if you recreate this card, make sure you add your circle sun mask before you start blending your sky. Now this is where I realised, so I've got my mask and I've just punched out a 1.5 inch circle from some masking paper. Again, you could use a post-it note. I've placed it where I want my sun to be and I'm just hoping it'll turn out okay even with the blue ink underneath it. I'm blending some more of the balmy blue onto my sky just to make a little bit of a contrast between that and what's underneath the mask. And then I can apply the reverse mask. This is what I punched that circle out of, and it'll cover and protect the rest of my card. To create my sun, I'm using So Saffron, pumpkin pie and a little cherry cobbler ink. I'm going to start with the So Saffron and I'm applying these using sponge daubers. I've got one for each colour. So I need to go heavier for this card because I need to cover that blue. So I've put down a good coat of So Saffron and then I'm going around the edges, taking it a little towards the centre with the pumpkin pie. And then I'll switch to the cherry cobbler and I just want this right on the edge. So I'm not taking it in far at all. And then I can quickly blend everything together using my So Saffron dauber before removing the mask. I'm using this stamp from the Label Me Bold stamp set to add some texture to the ground. I'm going to use crumb cake ink to stamp this and it turned out way darker than I wanted, but I went with it anyway once I'd started. It will fade back a little once it dries. Then I'm using the birds from the Beautiful Moments stamp set and I'm just going to stamp those a couple of times on my panel. That's my background complete, so I can now remove the masks covering the main image. The side panels and the bridge panel were completed in much the same way as the main panel. I coloured the meerkats on the main panel in much the same way, alternating the two colour combinations I used. I'm using Early Espresso card for my card base, and this is just half a standard sheet of cardstock. You want to place it into the scoreboard with the longest side across the top, and then score down at 1¼ inches and 2½ inches from each side. Folding the card is simple. The score lines either side of the main centre panel need to be valley folds, and then the two on the outside are mountain folds. So fold all of these and burnish with your bone folder. I'm going to stamp the lizard on the left hand side panel and the centre panel, and then I'll layer the ones I've hand cut on top of it. I've done this so that the little spiny bits on his back will show, and if you haven't cut out the tongue, then that will show as well. Now all the elements are ready, I can start putting this card together. So I have 2 Sahara sand mats here, one for the front panel, one for the back panel. Then I also have some smaller panels for my side sections. For the bridge section, I have an Early Espresso layer, a Sahara sand layer, and then my ink blended layer will go on top. And then I have 2 pieces of designer series paper. These are from the Neutrals 6-inch stack, and they're in Sahara sand. And that's it, my card is now finished. It's a very simple fancy fold card to create. And it'll fold flat in either direction. And even if you cut down this size to fit into a smaller envelope, you would still be able to fit in all of the images. You just have to lower the birds a bit and lower the sun. And here's another look at my original card. I do prefer the sun on my original one, but even with my mistake, the newer version turned out okay. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. Bye for now.